I should have taken that left turn to Albuquerque.
All we are saying is give peace a chance. All we are saying is give peace a chance.
Following that, so do you think our troops are defending our freedom in Iraq? We're hearing that constantly to this from the start of the war, from 2002 to the present. We hear constantly commercials saying our troops are defending our freedoms in Iraq. And I know I'm a veteran, member of Veterans for Peace. Robert is a veteran. What do you think of that? And if it's meant to avenge 9/11, the second part of that. So, because there are elements, they're defending our right to obtain oil, possibly. Roger, though, I'm putting the pressure on you. Roger, what do you think?
But it's 9/11. It's 9/11. Don't you get it? It's 9/11. We heard that so many times. And the fact is, nobody from Iraq was involved in 9/11. They came from other countries. So what was the point? It was, like I alluded to earlier, it was manipulating the minds of people in order to get them to support a policy which has proven to be flawed beyond almost anything we've done. Well, the fact that there were no 9/11 people involved in the attacks from Iraq, the fact that Iraq didn't even like Al-Qaeda, Hussein kicked them out of his country, and there was just no support at all. So we were bamboozled, and we're still being bamboozled. I'm sorry, but it's unfortunate.
It's a constant reoccurring theme, and how do you deal with it, Sheri?
Well,
no, Roger?
Yeah, well, it's less reoccurring because people have figured it out.
You're listening to different channels. I'm still hearing it, and I don't want to. It's not my will, but I'm still hearing that theme.
Oh, well, I try to keep my radio and television not tuned to those stations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Turn it to the FM, not the AM.
There
Sheri?
you go.
I think that is one of the problems, is the media isn't really giving us accurate information, and I think that's one of the reasons that people don't understand what exactly is happening and why more people aren't speaking out against what we're doing. I think there are so many catchphrases that they're trying to sell this war to the American people, and I think it's been effective on a lot of levels. I don't think what we're doing is defending our freedom. I think people like to take advantage of the freedoms that they have, and unfortunately, that's probably one of the reasons we've been allowed to get away with this war. If it was World War II and people were actually rationing things like gasoline, heaven forbid, or anything else, people might actually take some consideration for what the soldiers' families are suffering. And I don't think, because it doesn't affect most people on a daily basis, they're very detached from it. They're very removed from the war and what's happening. Again, I think our government likes to pretend that the military is protecting our freedom by us being over there, but I don't see the connection at all.
Sheri makes a very good point, too, about a lot of families not getting involved right now. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that we don't have a draft. During Vietnam, families were being, everyone knew someone who was being drafted to go to Vietnam. And today, it's in many cases, it's the members of the lower class that are joining the military for a way out of where they're at. They look at it as a chance of job training. A lot of people who were in the military at the time of the 9/11 strikes had joined up, joined the Air Force or the Navy to learn some type of a skill, and they had no idea that they were going to be going to war. And the people who were being pulled in after that, we had George W. Bush yelling, remember 9/11. It was like it was remember the Maine or remember the Alamo again, and it became a war cry. And too many people bought into that. And of course, we all know, like Roger said, the people who were involved in the 9/11 from Al Qaeda, that involved mostly people from Saudi Arabia. There were people from the United Arab Emirates involved. And as far as, like he said, Al Qaeda wasn't there. Saddam Hussein wouldn't have anything to do with Al Qaeda. And oddly enough, it was us going in and occupying Iraq that created a vacuum that allowed Al Qaeda in Iraq to be formed there. So we've actually created more terrorists by attacking Iraq than we had before Iraq. So all you got to do is put up a big picture of George W. Bush, and it's one of the greatest recruitment tools for terrorism that they have around the world today. And we need to do something like that. And plus, it is not a war in Iraq right now. It is an occupation. We are an occupying force. And we keep calling these people insurgents. They're more like freedom fighters, if you think about it. If we were attacked, if we were being occupied, good and well that most of us would be out there and we would be fighting tooth and nail, and we would be calling ourselves freedom fighters. We would be trying to get our freedoms back. And as far as the troops going over to Iraq and defending our freedoms, oddly enough, they've given more freedoms, I think, to some of the Iraqis over there, while taking some of ours away at home. You get stuff like the Patriot Act, where they're saying that that everything that we use, they can listen in on our phone calls without getting a warrant now. They can read our emails without getting a warrant. Suddenly, we're losing freedom. So how can this war be for our freedoms when it's actually ending up taking away some of them? So no, I don't buy that. We're fighting for our freedom stuff. We had freedoms before the war, and they're going downhill now.
Absolutely. So, Bruce, you think Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein were good friends, or?
Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein, no, they weren't good friends. And I agree with what Robert said about how we've actually given up our freedoms, our freedom to talk on the telephone without the fear of Big Brother listening in.
Never know what that click is,
yes,
especially us.
That's right. And even the airport security, I'm thinking of going into a place in Washington, D.C., one of the museums there, and the guard there at the door told me to drink some of the water that was in my glass, in my bottle, to prove to him that it was not something dangerous. And this is one of the things that is a way to put people under their thumb, to show their authoritarianism that they have, is to make you drink what you bring in. You can just throw it away, but obviously we're losing our freedoms.
I believe so also, and it is incredible. I just kind of talked with someone recently, and I was eating breakfast on 9/11, and next to me was a gentleman smoking a cigarette and playing a Cherry Master, and probably worked a different shift, having a drink while I was having breakfast, and now 2 out of 3 of those things are no longer allowed, just since 9/11. I just thought that was kind of interesting right there. So really, one of these points, we're continually being told that we're at war in Iraq for our national defense. Do you think this is national defense or defending our national interests? And do you think those are different things?
They
Roger.
are. They are different things.
All right,
they
I'm
are.
telling you.
And the term national defense is a sales pitch. Because if you want to sell a war, you have to put it in the right words. So we talk about national defense, and of course everybody wants to take care of our country and defend our country.
Absolutely.
So the term national defense was totally a sales pitch. Now, the real reason that we're over there, despite all that was told to us, most of which is not true, we found out. By the way, I went to high school with a girl who worked with, is it Hans Blick?
Hans Blick, yes, right.
Hans Blick.
She works directly with him, and she was partially responsible for checking out weapons of mass destruction. And I was at a gathering, and she was there, and she said there was absolutely no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And we were told, of course, that there was by the government. The national interests, just because...
Is there anything there we might want?
Just because President Bush was in the oil business and the Vice President, Mr. Personality himself, was in the oil business, doesn't mean our interest is in their oil. Although every country tries to protect its national interests. So we do that all around the world anyway. But we haven't accomplished much in securing oil up to this point. And if that was their aim, it didn't work.
Well, remember when they were saying that the oil was actually going to pay for this war?
Mm-hmm.
And it certainly hasn't, has it?
$50 billion war. It was that $50 billion war. I remember that.
Barrels.
Sheri, what do you think about that issue? It's still being sold as national defense. So interesting.
Well, I think one of the other things too is that when you're fighting a war on an ideal, that's not really a war. It's not an effective war anyway. The war on drugs, the war on poverty, exactly. A war on terror isn't what our military should be fighting. If there is a true enemy and a threat to us by an enemy, that's one thing. That's to me what national defense should mean. Our military is ready to respond to that attack. But I certainly feel like it has to be related to oil, not only because of George Bush and his oil connections and his history over even in the Gulf. I believe that he is probably profiting from this, and certainly Dick Cheney has connections with Halliburton. It seems very obvious to me that it's really a war about people trying to take things from people who don't know any better, because we can be a big bully and go around and in the name of protection and goodwill, we're actually stealing from people and putting them in danger as well. So I think it seems very obviously about oil.
Well, Americans are using about 25% of the world's resources, which is really incredible. Robert.
Well, yeah, it is. It's in our national interest. I mean, isn't it in our national interest that Halliburton and KBR make more and more money? Isn't it in our national interest that we have Halliburton going in there and making breakfast for our troops and letting them bathe and clean their clothes in water that's tainted, and then charging them extravagant amounts for it? I mean, why shouldn't they be making billions of dollars? Isn't that in the best interest of this country? Isn't that what they try to feed us? That we have to keep feeding the corporations so that they can, the trickle-down theory. Well, it's ridiculous. I recall when I was in the military, when there had to be potatoes peeled, it was usually one of us that did it. We didn't have somebody coming in to do it for us. And I think that's a complete waste of money. That's been always part of a soldier's job is to dig the trenches. It's been part of a soldier's job to make sure that the latrines were dug, that the mess hall was cleaned, and that the food was served. That's always been part of the soldier's jobs. And we didn't have to pay them extra for it. We were already paying them to do this stuff. So it's a complete waste of money. And we're putting more and more civilians in harm's way over there. We're making these civilians drive these roads from the airport to Baghdad and take a chance of getting killed by these IEDs. And the money that these people are making is ridiculous. And they've got this plan where the more money they spend, the more money they make.
Oh yeah, cost plus.
That's right, cost plus.
For,
where they'll spend
25%.
What do they do? They lease some type of like a navigator for $45,000 a year. You could buy the navigator for what? A little bit more than that, and it's yours. You don't got to worry about it. But they're leasing these things at exorbitant amounts. So no, it's all about cash. It's all about making money right now, and that's what they're doing. They're not making any money for me and you, but they're making money for their buddies, and that's what counts. Because after George W. Bush and Shooter Cheney leave office, they're going to have these job offers because they made a lot of people money. That's what it's all about.
I believe Bruce, what do you think about this?
Well, I remember Bush's words during his State of the Union address before he attacked Iraq. He said that he could not allow a brutal dictator to dominate a vital region. So what is vital about the region of Iraq? It's sitting on a pool of oil. And it goes back to an old movie that Robert Redford was in, 3 Days of the Condor. At the very end of that movie, it's brought up that the government has the need to go after oil no matter where it is because the American people will demand it and they won't care where it comes from. That's the point that's made at the end of that movie. And it seems like Bush has taken that as his modus operandi.
That is a sad mandate, and really a lot of this is related to our level of consumption, definitely. And it's just amazing, though. I mean, what exactly do you think right now of the weapons of mass destruction claims that really got us into this war? People really don't seem to care about what wasn't found. What do you think there, Roger?
Well, like I told you before, I talked to someone that worked with the committee, and she said that there was none. I think by this point, everybody knows that there were no weapons of mass destruction, and it's just one more thing that we were told that people now realize were never there.
But I talked to a good Republican lady just last week and said there's just no way that George W. Bush could have known that there weren't weapons of mass destruction. And people, the problem is, and why the question, sadly, is still valid at this point in time, is people still believe that. And
you will find people that will believe anything. So it's, it's...
Well, and they're believing that they were there and they were taken somewhere, but